because today the war in Europe is over. Adolf Hitler has killed himself, and Germany has surrendered. Now we can put all of our military force in defeating the Japanese and liberating all of the men like you. Many hearts are light tonight, and many will start to live again. God grant this peace may last. I'll love you always, Carrie. 12 days after this journal entry, Carrie would learn the fate of her husband. Nurses and WACs who would leave for Des Moines for other deployment would tell Carrie if they ever ran into anybody who was on Corregidor who might know something of Wally, they would let her know. Well, in May of 1945, she gets a very expensive phone call. Again, phone calls were very expensive at this time, from a friend of hers who was a nurse out in Philadelphia. A patient had just come in. He was a prisoner of war by the Japanese. He was very weak, but he had been on Corregidor. And she thought maybe he might know something of Wally. So Carrie placed her own very expensive phone call out to the hospital in Philadelphia. A Sergeant Novak answered the phone. She explained herself to him and asked, "Could you please tell me anything about my husband?" The very kind but weak voice on the other end of the line said, "Oh, my dear, I helped bury your husband." Wally was never a prisoner of war. On the day that Corregidor fell, 3 years before, over 3 years, Wally and his men were ordered down to the beaches to defend the island against the Japanese. On their way down, all 7 of them were hit directly by an explosive shell. All 7 died instantly. By the time Carrie learned of the death of her husband, he had been dead for over 3 years. Dead before she ever joined the Women's Army Corps. Dead before she ever wrote a word in this journal. August 27th, 1945. This is the last time I shall ever write in this book, because this book was kept for you only, Wally. But I'm going to write this to you anyway, even though they say now you are dead, and have been before I ever started writing in this book. I tried so many times to write this last message, but I couldn't seem to do so, because I didn't want to admit this would be the last time I would ever write to you. On May 19th, a Sergeant Novak told me what had happened to you, dear. And somehow I heard you saying to me, "Don't cry, Carrie. I'm still here." It's true, Wally, that you've been so close to me. All this time when I thought you were alive and you weren't. I see no reason why you won't still be close to me, now that I know you won't be coming back. All I want to say now, dear, is this. If it took your life to save this country, it's all right. Our country, our freedoms have been saved. I feel we should now count not what we've lost, but what we've saved and gained. I shall always try to live as you want me to, Wally. I know I'll make so many mistakes without you here, for you were my stabilizer. Wally, within me is such a peculiar ache and pain I know that nothing will ever take away. I know it's just from being half of me. The other half you took with you. As I said to you when you sailed, we shall meet again. And I'll always remember what you said to me. Keep your chin up, Carrie. Don't let them see you down. I shall, Wally, and I'll try to live for the 2 of us. Stay close to me, dear, and give me a hand, for I'll need you always. Please know that being your wife was truly the greatest blessing I will ever receive on this earth. Goodbye, dear, and I thank God you are now at last safe. Your wife, Carrie. On August 18th, Carrie appeared on the parade ground where she had marched in years of hopeful optimism. But on this day, she appeared to receive the Purple Heart in honor of her dead husband. Afterwards, she processed her military papers, walked out of the gate of Fort Des Moines, leaving Army life forever. Wally's remains would be located and brought back to the United States for burial. As Carrie said, safe at last. I thought maybe you'd like to meet Carrie and Wally. I know they would have loved to have met you.
When I think back on these times and the dreams we left behind, I'll be glad 'cause I was blessed to get to have you in my life. When I look back on these days, I'll look and see your face. You were right there for me. In my dreams I always see you soaring by the sky. In my
Well, Carrie kept her promise to Wally. She lived a long life. After the war, she remarried, and she had 2 children. But for the rest of her 83 years on this earth, a large portrait of Wally would hang in her home. I should know. I grew up in that home. Carrie was my mother. The cost of war is paid in the human heart. I'm sorry, shocked some of you. The cost of war is paid in the human heart. I saw the cost of war, but I also saw the devotion. I promise you that if my mother and Wally were standing before you today, they would tell you this country was worth their sacrifice. Today we have 1.5 million men and women serving in the U.S. military today. May you and I prove worthy of their sacrifices. Thank you for letting me speak with you today. Now we have time for questions. Any questions for me?
Can we just clap first? Can we just
Well,
sing
Carrie,
every
yes. Carrie was my mother, yes. Thought maybe you knew of my book. You might have heard My Mother's Fort, but I interviewed a lot of wax for that. But my mother, yes, was Carrie.
How did you commit suicide?
Hitler would go underneath a bunker underneath Berlin when he knew it was all over. We were bombing him from all over the place by that time. So he went underground, hid, and when there was no hope left, he simultaneously, at the same time, put a pistol to his head and bit on a cyanide tablet, which is poison. I guess he really wanted to die because he